Greetings. Welcome to the Ethics Education offering from the International Coach Federation, ICF. This is presented to you by the ICF Global Ethics Community of Practice. As a special service, ICF Global has developed a free ethics training course that, upon completion, will grant 3 ethics CCE units. Additionally to meeting the ethics requirement, this course will provide 3 of the 24 core competency CCE units for ICF credential renewal. This course consists of an on-demand video presentation from the ICF Ethics Community of Practice, an article, and a summative final quiz. This presentation is intended to provide you with 3 CCEs which have been pre-approved by the ICF for meeting the ethics requirement for ongoing credentialing. At the end of the presentation, there will be a quiz. Be sure to review the entire Code of Ethics and the ethics FAQs before taking the quiz. You should know that this presentation is not the only source for getting the required CCEs. You are free to get the ethics CCEs from any other ICF-approved continuing education source. The following slides have been created by the ICF Global Ethics Community of Practice. My name is Michael J. Marks, and I lead the Ethics Discussion Group, which meets every second Wednesday of the month at 11 a.m. Eastern Time in the United States. We welcome you to attend the group. Pre-registration is not required. As an ICF member, you can find the access details to the group on the ICF website. If you are not a member of ICF, please write to ethics@coachfederation.org to ask for an invitation. Questions regarding the ethics and standards can also be addressed at this address. We hope that you gain a lot from this presentation, and we would welcome your input. Remember, ethics is about right relationships with your clients, right relationships with other coaches, right relationships with your community, right relationships with the industry. We hope you enjoy this presentation. The objectives for this presentation are as follows. We will review the changes to the ICF Code of Ethics. We will look at typical ethical complaints. We will go over situational case studies. There will be a quiz for understanding. Before taking the quiz for the CCEUs, please review the entire code and the FAQs. We will also take a look in this presentation at the Ethics Assist line so that you can get help when you need it.
Now let's take a look at the code. Are there any changes? Terry, what is different from the last code that the ICF adopted?
Well, I'm glad you asked because there are some changes. First of all, think about it. When we coach people, we coach them on what they want, not what they don't want. So isn't it natural and logical that our code is written with the same perspective, identifying what ethics and ethical behaviors we want instead of what behavior we don't want? So 99% of the code has been rewritten, except we were very intentional about leaving numbers 4, 21, and 26 just the way they were. For example, number 4 says to refrain from unlawful discrimination. That stayed just like that. Number 21 says avoid any sexual or romantic relationship with current clients or sponsors or students or mentees or supervisees. That one stayed the same also, avoid. And number 26 says that we have to have clear agreements about the conditions under which confidentiality may not be maintained. For example, did you know that coaching has no client privilege like some other professions, in some cases law or psychiatry, do have? We don't have. We don't have client privilege. So we have to be very clear in our agreements about the conditions under which confidentiality may not be maintained. Another thing that's different about this code, and the code is reviewed, by the way, about every 3 years. So the 2015 approved code has an overview that presents our core values, that identifies who we are as coaches. You know, values like integrity, excellence, collaboration, and respect. This is the context for us having our code. We also added the preamble. The preamble includes now other people, in addition to coaches, clients, and sponsors like it did before. It now includes coach trainers, coach supervisors and mentors, mentees, support staff, and assistants who may be involved in the field of coaching and have some contractual relationships. Another thing that we added in part 1 includes coaching students. And finally, you can see on this slide that bartering has been deleted. And instead of the word bartering, we now have number 16, our code point, that says we have an obligation to honor an equitable coach-client relationship, regardless of the form of compensation. Some other changes also. What other changes have been made, Norma?
Well, Terry, as you know, there's been an increasing number of internal coaches. And so this year they included paragraph number 14, which is added to clarify roles for internal coaches, set boundaries, and review with appropriate resource any conflicts of interest that may emerge between coaching and other role functions. Number 22 now requires us to remain alert to indications that there is a shift in the value received from the coaching relationship and respecting the client's right to terminate the coaching relationship at any point during the process, of course, subject to the provisions of the agreement. Now, Section 5 was added, continuing development, because of our high value on continued learning. And that's one of the reasons why they added it. They wanted to make sure that we continue to develop ourselves as professionally and as a coach. Another thing that's been added in response to feedback from the profession was a link to the ethical conduct review process. And if you haven't taken a look at it, I would encourage you to link on it after you've listened to this presentation today.
So Norma, we've been looking at what is in the code. Now I'm curious, what's not covered?
Great question, Terry. Well, essentially, the types of things that are not covered, and this is just a short list of examples here: workplace disputes, business-to-business intellectual property, issues based on dissatisfaction with a company or a provider's price, and contractual business agreements. Now, bear in mind that while these types of things are not covered by the code, your behavior as a coach in relation to the above may give rise to a potential claim of a violation under the code. So be very careful on how you act in those situations. And Terry, so in your experience, what are the typical ethical complaints?
We've identified 7, and I'm actually going to go beyond my personal experience. And that's the beauty of having this community of practices, that there are a lot of people passionate about having ethics be the foundation of our profession. So we all work together and collaborate together so that anything I might say, I'm actually representing our ethical community of practice. And the community of practice identified 7 typical ethical complaints. These aren't in any particular order. However, number 1, unclear agreements must come to the ICF very, very often. And I know in my experience, that is often the case too. Number 2, misrepresentation of services and/or credentials. I mean, we are professionals in coaching, so we should know the difference between a certification, a credential, and accreditation. So here comes someone up to you and says, oh, do you have a coaching credential? And this is just a lay person from the public. They did not have the benefit of going through training in coaching or taking workshops that helps them differentiate between credentials that are given by the association. ICF gives the credentials, the International Coach Federation gives credentials, and then there are many schools and programs that give certifications. A credential means you've had the training, which could come from a certificate from a program or a school. A credential means the training plus the right number of years or hours of actual coaching experience. Training plus experience is the credential. So the public might not understand the difference that ICF gives the credentials and schools or programs give us a certificate. And then you have the word accreditation, which is ICF telling a program that they meet the standards for delivery of the training. So all of this is known by us as coaching professionals, but people in the public might not get the difference. So we have to be ambassadors for our profession and help use the language appropriately and even take the time to educate others as to what this means for us. So you can see how misrepresentation of credentials might be a pretty popular one where there are complaints, misrepresentation. Number 3, unfortunately, this is on the list, lack of confidentiality, and it's not just coaches, it's also support personnel. Number 4, conflicts of interest. Simply said, this is not knowing when to step away. Can you just imagine someone who wants so deeply and passionately to help a client solve the situation that they have and gain some awareness of who they are? And in that, they are blinded because maybe they are not the right person because of their attachment. Maybe they're not the right person to continue being this person's coach. So not knowing when to step away. This also might be when a person needs to stop the coaching arrangement. And these show up in the next items as well. But let's not skip over number 5. Inappropriate relations with clients. Socially inappropriate, physically inappropriate, sexually inappropriate. We have complaints about those still. Number 6, lack of awareness or judgment as to when a client can better be served by another professional or resource. And number 7, not respecting a client's right to end the coaching arrangement. These are typical ethical complaints.
Thank you, Terry. Now we're going to move on to some real-world situations. Now, these 6 mini case studies can be answered with a yes or no for the most part. Give some thought before you answer. Now, please note, these are all actual cases. They provide context to the ICF Code of Ethics, and they promote you, or they give you an opportunity to stop and pause.
Thank you, Norma. Yes, indeed, these are real. Just imagine yourself. You are at a networking meeting and you connect with a social worker who wants to know how a coach, you are a coach, how a coach would handle a situation where the client has lost her job and she's applied for unemployment compensation and she's getting more and more depressed each week. You explain that because you studied psychology in college, you can coach her and help her with her depression. Yes or no? The answer is no. First of all, when you set up the coaching agreement, you need to be clear whether you are a coach or whether you are a psychologist or someone who has studied psychology. All right? Not necessarily a psychologist, someone who has just studied psychology. You have to be very clear that you are only going to offer what is within the realm of coaching. As a matter of fact, it's a good rule of thumb that if you have not studied something in coach training or taken some workshops or read some books, if it does not include psychology as a field of study, it's not your business to offer it. You are a coach. That's what your agreement says. Stick to coaching. Let's look at the second real life one. What do we have here? Oh, your new client asks you to go to dinner with him and some friends. You recognize that you may have some feelings for him and you'd like to get to know him in a different context. May you accept the invitation? Yes or no? No, you may not. Did you come to the same conclusion? You have to wait to socialize until after the coaching engagement is finished. And you have to remember that as coaches, we have to be appropriate with culturally sensitive boundaries that govern our interactions with clients or sponsors. So no, you may not accept if there is any change in the coaching relationship that would take it to another level, a friendship or a personal relationship. It is not something that you should do while you are his coach. Now, what do we have? Number 3, you attended a coaching conference and the handouts were very useful. Isn't that nice when there are wonderful handouts at so many of our coaching conferences? And on this one, you look very carefully to see whether or not there was a copyright symbol because you really like those handouts and you didn't find any. Therefore, you interpreted that to mean that you can use them yourself on your website without mentioning where you got them. I mean, the person didn't put a copyright symbol down. Yes or no? Well, the answer is no. Just because there's no copyright symbol doesn't mean you can use the materials on your website. It is prudent, I want to say, I almost would say advisable, that you check with the author first to see if there are any other considerations that the author of the material might have. It's only respectful for us to do that. And you might have to get permission from the publisher. You know, and I wrote a book, and in order for me to use anything from my book, I have to still write my publisher, get permission, and then when I get permission, I have to language it exactly the way the publisher wants. So there's great care that we need to take when we have materials that we like, that we would like to use in other ways. And we have to recognize and honor the efforts and contributions of others. And this comes right from our code of ethics. and only claim ownership of your own material. Now, you might say to yourself, but it's not unethical. That might be true, but it might not be legal. There are two different operating paradigms here. One of them is ethics and one is legal. We have to be aware of both. Even though our code of ethics is ethical, monitored by our association, we still have to take into account legal possibilities. You tell your clients that when they refer someone to you who becomes a client, you shall send them $200 as a thank you fee. Or it could be 200 euros, 200 shekel, whatever that amount of money is that you want to give as a thank you. Is this referral commission ethical? Yes or no? The answer is yes, this is ethical. As long as you honor an equitable coach-client relationship, you may receive the money. And you may send the money as well. This next one is I think very interesting. And you may need to take a little more time to think about this one. If a potential client asks you about another coach's approach, and you have heard negative comments about his, could be her, it doesn't matter, style, is it acceptable for you to be honest and say what you have heard? Yes or no? Well, the answer is yes. It is ethical. However, think about this. Do you want to spread information that you did not obtain directly yourself? Somebody else said so. Are you going to pass on hearsay, other people's words and perceptions? So that's something you might consider. And it reflects on our profession if we go around saying negative things about people that we haven't even met personally or experienced directly. Is that the profession that we want to be in? So even though the answer ethically is yes, you might want to think further about this one. And the last one. This one actually is not a yes-no, because sometimes in ethics, what we need to do is to be aware of situations, a bigger awareness than just, this is easy, yes, no. So here's the situation. A colleague comes to you and tells you that she thinks something unethical is going on with coaches in her company. And she knows the ICF Code of Ethics, so she knows it's unethical based upon our code. What should she do? Whom should she tell? Take a moment, think about what you would do. Well, first of all, make sure that you don't just sit there and do nothing, okay? Yes, you have to act. Yes, you have to do something with this information. Sometimes you have to find out who the appropriate party is. It might just be going to the person's boss. It might be actually talking to the person directly. It might be going to the human resources, HR department, talent management section of the company. In one case I was familiar with many years ago, we had to go all the way to the general counsel, the head lawyer in the company, who actually said to us, I don't know, and said, why don't you ask your association? So we went to ICF So there could be several players who are involved in this. And that's why ethics is not just a, this is what you need to do. It requires community to help think through things. It requires perceptions and perspectives that might be bigger than your own. But for goodness sakes, do something. Figure out what the appropriate action is. Use the supports and resources that you have available. People who are familiar with ethics, familiar with the ICF code. And this probably brings us to learning something about the Ethics Assist line. Thank you for entertaining this conversation. I hope you learned something about yes, no, or now what?
Yes. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Terry Belf, that was, and Norman Nielsen. The Ethics Assist line indeed is there to help you answer any questions that you have. ICF has established this channel for communication on ethical topics, and we call it simply the Ethics Assist line. The ethics community has put together a system for handling most ethical dilemmas. Whether you need simple information or in-depth consultation, your query will be dealt with professionally and with confidentiality. Many queries actually follow a pattern, and they have answers that are really already known to the ICF. Qualified staff at the ICF home office will direct you to resources and solutions. On the other hand, your situation might be unique and require the support of another source. Ethics advisors, experienced coaches, as well as the potential of the ICF Independent Review Board, known as the IRB, are all there ready to help. The Assist line will help you find the answers you need. The ethics community will respond to your questions when you send an email to ethics@coachfederation.org, ethics@coachfederation, one word, .org, or by calling the U.S. telephone number 859-219-3580. Dialing the United States access code, country code, which is usually with a 1 at the end, and then 859-219-3580. In summary, what we've looked at today are the various ethics opportunities at the ICF, especially the Community of Practice, which is on the second Wednesday of each month. We've looked at the changes to the code, what you need to know about the most common inquiries to the ethics line. We are presenting to you at the end of this presentation a ethics article. All of those will be included in a quiz, and there will be 1 or 2 questions from each segment of this program. In order to claim your CCEs for today, you will need to have successfully answered these 6 ethical situation questions. You will need to identify 3 things that you've learned about the coaching ethics that are important for you to know as an ethical member of our profession. In order to do this quiz, you have to also read the attached article, Do You Give Advice to Your Client? And finally, we want to thank everyone that has participated in the presentation that's been shown to you today. You can contact ICF at the address shown, and we welcome all comments and additions to what you think can help the ethics community grow and become a stronger force in our industry.